Yeah, yeah, the meeting the message. The one thing we heard, I thought that signalled, I guess, something in terms of a new sort of agreement or upgraded one was Anthony Albanese talking about military to military communication. And people will go, well, that sounds a bit dry. But remember, we've had these dangerous incidents with ADF personnel involving the Chinese military. Is the test of this no more of these types of incidents? And if they happen, well, then they are just words from the Chinese leader?
Yeah, look, I think this is probably less than meets the eye, frankly. Obviously, Australia has pressed China on the safety of its interactions with not just Australian naval ships and aircraft, by the way, but Dutch, Canadian, Japanese and the like. And so I guess the fig leaf coming out of that is mill-to-mill communication. Often or sometimes in the past, that's been talked about as a kind of hotline where they can talk very easily if there is an incident. But, the Chinese have set these up in the past with the Americans, and when the Americans ring, nobody answers at the other end. So I think the real test is whether there is actually communication over this line.
Yeah, okay. So you get the phone number, but it doesn't mean it gets answered. That's I guess
a cynical answer, Tom. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's got to be tested.
We are a free and open media here. You say what you like. The other interesting thing that caught my eye was the memorandum of understanding to do with the energy transition. What's interesting about this is what we're signing. Hey, let's all work together. Critical minerals, reduce emissions, all that sort of thing. At the same time, the reports are, the experts say to us, well, the Chinese government in some way, connections to the Chinese Communist Party, is still working feverishly to hack our energy grid. Does that sort of sum up the dichotomy of this relationship strangely well?
Well, the Chinese have a saying they use for these sorts of situations, which I think describes the relationship quite well, and that is embracing while fighting. And I'm afraid that's going to typify the relationship for some time to come, maybe more fighting, less embracing. I mean, they're two separate issues. The hacking is worrisome, and it's gone on for a long time, by the way, and that is not the action of a friendly country. The clean energy stuff is, kind of complicated in this respect. In one respect, China's our biggest customer for lithium and critical minerals, but Japan, the United States, Europe, the so-called like-minded friends of Australia would much prefer we start to deal with them rather than China. But if China's the biggest market, and China is offering to invest, then the other countries aren't, or at a slower pace. What do we do? So I think we're going to have a much tougher line on Chinese investment without hopefully upsetting the Chinese market. But I think that's going to be the cause of strain in the future.
It's an interesting question, and we want this stuff developed, but how do we treat it if no one else is willing to do it? And of course, Labor's got its tax credit scheme, whether that tips the scales or not, we'll see. You mentioned the Chang Lei incident. How did you think this was handled by the Prime Minister? He said he hadn't seen it or was aware of it in his press conference, and the next morning spoke, I guess, carefully but diplomatically. Was there another option for him here?
Well, yes. I mean, I certainly can't second guess whether he's briefed. I presume he wasn't by the time he had his press conference yesterday. I mean, he'd come straight out of the lunch and straight to the press conference. Look, he could have been tougher, but Australia has deliberately mixed messaging on China. So Mr. Albanese, as the Prime Minister, has decided to speak diplomatically, or as diplomatically as he can. Penny Wong, the Foreign Minister, on Sunday was very tough on China, talking about a permanent contest in the Pacific. And Richard Miles, about the Defence Minister, about 3-4 weeks ago in Singapore, made a very tough speech about China. I think the problem or the criticism comes because Mr. Albanese has decided or been advised that as the Prime Minister, he should be very cautious about what he says. But then things like this happen and people in Australia expect him to react. And he's just an easy target for the opposition in that respect.
Yeah, look, the Chinese relationship is always a bit easier in opposition because you just pick your moments to criticise and then stay quiet. Richard McGregor, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.